Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how I set up my Sony FX3's controls to make my shooting as efficient as possible. I'm going to start with how I control focus. By default I like to use manual focus and then switch to autofocus as and when the shot requires it. The first control I'm going to talk about is the button on the lens. Now this isn't available on all lenses, but all of my Sony lenses have this button, so I've made it part of my shooting workflow. I programmed the button on the lens so that when you hold it the camera will start autofocusing and then switch back to manual focus when you release it. I find this method most useful when filming a scene when you quickly need to focus on somebody's face. You just hold the button, and because the camera switches to autofocus and face eye detection is enabled, the camera will immediately start tracking faces and focusing on them. If you want to change this setting, you go to Menu, Setup, Operation Customize, Movie Custom Key Setting, Lens, and then I set it to AF/MF Selector Hold. I also have the custom button 4 on the back of the camera set to Autofocus Manual Focus Selection Toggle, which allows me to quickly turn AF on if I don't want to hold the button on the lens. To change this setting, go to Menu, Setup, Operation Customize, Movie Custom Key Setting, Rear 1, and then go to Option 3 and change it to AF/MF Selector Toggle. This can also be useful when using touch focus on the display or when shooting a subject where autofocus needs to be left on. Another little benefit I find to this method is it provides a quick way to cycle between touch focus and touch tracking. You can see that as I press that button, the touch focus box on the screen is cycling between those two modes. I can also perform a quick autofocus by pressing the shutter button. At the moment I'm using the wide focus area, and you'll see that the camera shows multiple areas that are currently in focus. Now if I switch to expand spot, you'll see that pressing the shutter performs an autofocus and shows which parts of the focus area has been used by turning it green. This can be very useful if you have a slow transition speed set for normal autofocus, as you can then choose either to do that or do a fast focus using the shutter button. Here you can see me doing a slow focus using the button on the side of the lens. And now I'll compare that to doing the same using the shutter button. If anybody's wondering why I don't use the AF/MF switch on the lens to switch between autofocus and manual focus, it's because if I switch that to manual focus, then none of these quick focus modes will work. I find it better to just leave that switch in AF and do the switching in camera. All of my focus area control is done with the joystick on the camera. I have it set to cycle through focus areas when pressing it, and by default the focus areas are also moved around by moving the joystick. I set my focus area limit so that I only have wide, zone and expand spot available to cycle through, as I find I can achieve all of my focusing requirements with just these 3 zones. Using the joystick this way makes focus area control very intuitive. If you want to set the same thing, go to Menu, AF/MF, Focus Area Limit, and then choose the focus areas that you wish to include by ticking them. As you can see, I just have these 3 ticked. And to set the joystick press to cycle focus areas, go Menu, Setup, Operation Customize, Movie Custom Key Setting, and then go to Top, number 4, Switch Focus Area. Next up is Focus Magnification. I use Focus Magnification a lot and leave this on the default button 5 on the back of the camera. I set my magnification so that it only uses the 4x zoom, allowing me to quickly toggle between 4x and normal with just one press of the button. If you want to set your focus magnification the same way, go to Menu, AF/MF, Focus Assistant, Initial Focus Magnification, and set that to ×4. Next we'll talk about focus peaking. I leave the peaking on-off switch control to the default position on the back of the camera. On the FX3, the peaking switch is off when you change to autofocus. I wish Sony would change this, because even when the camera is in autofocusing mode, it would be useful to be able to see what the camera has focused on. To help with this, I normally use either my Atomos Ninja 5 or Shinobi, which does allow me to leave peaking on when the autofocusing is enabled. I use flexible exposure mode with the main exposure controls in the default positions on the camera. I've already posted a video about flexible exposure mode, which I'll link to above. Using flexible exposure mode gives me the ability to quickly access shutter speed, aperture and ISO using the buttons on the camera, as well as being able to lock those settings and set them to auto. I set up my FX3 so that I have iris control with the front dial, ISO control on the rear dial, and shutter speed control on the control wheel on the back of the camera. For me, the default option of having the shutter speed on the control wheel makes it very intuitive, because as I press the shutter button to lock and unlock it, I can then just rotate the wheel to adjust it. In terms of monitoring, as I said, I normally use either the Atomos Ninja 5 or my Atomos Shinobi in conjunction with the FX3's display to monitor my exposure. On the FX3 I have the histogram enabled, which gives me a quick exposure reference. And on the external monitor I have the waveform displayed for more detail. I do also use zebras on both displays. I have the FX3 set for exposing skin tones correctly, and the external monitor set to show any areas that are clipping. Using both together this way saves me from having to switch between different zebra levels during shooting, and also keeps my external display free from skin tone zebras for a cleaner image during composition. For setting white balance, I quickly access the menu using the dedicated white balance button on top of the camera. Next up is the function menu. I configure this so that it either lets me control settings that I don't have access to via a button, or quickly display important information about my settings. On the top row I tend to have items that affect the recording. So I have file format, the record frame rate, picture profiles, steady shot, audio recording level, and exposure compensation. Notice that at the moment the exposure compensation is greyed out. This is because it only works when one of the exposure settings is set to auto. For example, if I set ISO to auto by holding down the ISO button, then the exposure compensation becomes active and I can adjust it. The bottom row are more about camera features and tool settings. In there I have focus mode, face eye priority, metering mode, zebra levels, peaking levels, and the gamma display assist. If you want to change your custom function menu, go to Menu, Setup, Operation Customize, Function Menu Settings, and then set them however you prefer. Finally, I'm going to talk about record buttons. I leave the main record button and the front record button as default, as I find them both useful depending on how I'm holding the camera. If I'm holding the camera by the body, I'll generally just use the record button on top of the camera. However, if I'm using my right hand to hold the camera by a handle, then I'll often find it easier just to reach to the button on the front of the camera using the thumb on my left hand. So I think that's it in terms of camera controls. If you try out any of these methods, then please do let me know how you get on. Alternatively, if you found a good way of working and you want to share that, then please do leave a comment. So that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.